Hi everybody, this is Craig Tanner for The Mindful Eye and the Photo of the Week on the Daily Critique. This week's Photo of the Week was submitted by Sam, who's an advanced photographer. Sam shot this image at the Miramar Naval Air Station in San Diego, California, just before twilight at an air show. And he said what really caught his eye here was the light coming through the flag, and then he sort of saw the soldiers were folding the flag, and he quickly framed this shot, and he said he just felt very fortunate to capture the moment with the focused awareness of the soldiers and also to have this sky above them. Sam shot this with a Canon 5D. He used a 300 millimeter lens, and the 5D is a full frame sensor camera, so that's effectively 300 millimeters. Great use of the long lens here. And Sam, shooting at ISO 400, shot at an aperture of f4 for 1/800th of a second. There's so many things I love about this image. One of the things that I love about it is just its potential to evoke a lot of emotion. There are so many archetypes that are represented in this image that are potentially very powerful from an emotional standpoint for the viewer. The idea of soldier, the idea of flag, the idea of service to the country, and then all of the archetypes that folding the flag represents. And the other thing about this image, because of all those potentially very powerful emotional archetypes, this image has the potential to be a metaphor or sort of a waypoint to memories or all kinds of things for a lot of people. And so just very, very powerful on that level of being able to evoke emotion. It's an intrinsically beautiful photograph. There's an incredible, at the same time, balance in this image in terms of all of the different subjects and elements, but it's also incredibly dynamic. You have sort of this bookended symmetry with the two soldiers on the outside, and then the same kind of feeling with the two soldiers here sort of partially turned towards each other. You have two soldiers that are lower, and they're bookending, and they're mostly surrounded by blue, and then most of the focus contrast in terms of color and value is in the middle here on these two soldiers. You have a lot of feeling of dynamic sort of relationships between subjects in the image because of the flag. It's on the right hand side and very, very powerful. You get to these sort of primary colors and just the idea of the flag itself, and then that can sort of play off of and balance these real strong vertical lines here. In the background you have this really dynamic gradient of sort of cool soft twilight blue coming up into this much more exciting part of the sky up here. So just so many things just from an intrinsic visual design standpoint that work really, really well in this image. Another thing that I find totally fascinating about this image is that I looked at it once and then I looked at it again and I was like, wait a minute. This image is evoking another image for me, and it almost immediately evoked one of the most famous war photographs of all time, which is the flag raising at Iwo Jima. And so I Googled that, and I was amazed when I looked at that image to see that the shape that the soldiers are making here overall is almost identical to the top line of the soldiers and the raising of the flag at Iwo Jima. And the other thing that's amazing is that even though there are 6 soldiers in that picture, for the casual viewer of that photograph, if you don't know the story, you don't see 2 of them. You really only see the 4 soldiers that are in the front. The other 2 are sort of in the back row, and they're so merged with the 2 of the other soldiers in the front row that you don't see them. So it's really sort of incredible how this image connects to or resonates with an outrageously powerful archetype just in terms of a very, very, very famous photograph. The other thing, and to me, this is one of the biggest takeaways that you can take with you from this photograph today. The other thing that's sort of amazing to me about this image is the way Sam has managed shadow detail. And it's interesting because under questions and comments, that was a question that he had. He said, that he very much intentionally, in the way he exposed this and the way he's presented it and working on it in Photoshop, he very intentionally left subtle detail in the soldiers, and he was asking about what I thought about that. And to me, from a visual design standpoint, it's one of the most powerful things about this image. If you were far away from this image, even if you're looking at it now and you just scoot back away from the monitor, and I'm doing that right now, the figures become much more silhouettes. But even from a distance, you can see detail. And for me, because I sort of follow the light, I kind of see the detail in this soldier's face right here first. And then what that subtle detail does is it moves me closer, and as I get closer, I go from seeing the soldiers as silhouettes. I start to see detail. I start to see the expressions on their faces. I start to see the olive drab of their uniforms. And you know, when we think about the visual hierarchy of how people look at our pictures, we know that the areas of highest contrast draw the eye first, and then bright areas, then warm tones, then mid-tones and cool tones, then areas that are very dark, and then we skip black with no detail. And even though areas that are very dark are sort of the last place we go, one of the things that I say a lot when I'm teaching is that how you manage shadow detail might be the most important part of your image. Because even though that's the last place we go, it's mysterious in there. If you just leave a little bit of detail in your shadows, it's the one thing that can actually physically encourage the viewer to do two things. Number one, to stay with the image a lot longer. All the other things, contrast, bright colors, warm colors, mids, they're all going to be readily apparent. But what's not so apparent is the shadow detail. And it will cause the viewer not only to come back around again and spend more time with the image, it can physically pull the viewer closer to the image. What's amazing to me about this image is I get closer to it, if I get very close to it and spend enough time with it, the green in here, instead of just being sort of an abstract, really starts to come forward. Part of that is just my memory and what I know in my mind about these uniforms, but that green starts to be a beautiful counterpoint to the red of the flag and the warm tone in the background. So just the way Sam has managed the shadow detail here, to me, is from just a purely visual standpoint, it's one of the most powerful things about this image. An incredible moment, an incredible use of framing with the long lens, just an amazing moment in terms of just the way all the different subjects relate in the frame here, and an image that has the potential to evoke a lot of emotion, a really powerful image. We want to say a huge thank you to Sam for sharing this image with us on the Mindful Eyes Photo of the Week on the Daily Critique. Have a great weekend, everybody.